All right, Sabs. Well, we had a fun birthing conversation. Now we're going to dive into some business. But before we do, I notice you've got a different background cooking here. You want to tell us a little bit about your life in the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, so my office isn't put together yet. It's give you a preview though. I've got a loft. It's a full library, but it's up above. Can't see it because I'm standing. But two-story library. But it's just not put together. Everything's still in boxes because I'm tearing all this out and rebuilding it. But when I left the hometown I grew up in 2001 and made a promise to myself that I would come back and one, give back to this community, and two, to be here to be back in the community and be able to support my family and help my family out. So this is a really cool realization. Those who've been close to me for some time have heard me talk about this. It's been on my list here for many years. And so I'll be splitting my time between Orange County and Washington going forward, which is going to be more of my life anyway, as I start kind of getting into some other realms. So I'm just kind of prepping for that. And it's been awesome. So I am excited to be back up in the Pacific Northwest. It's where I grew up. That's why I always feel like very connected to Canada, because we went to Canada all the time. Like if I looked at my back window, I'm looking across the straits to Vancouver Island and to Victoria. And so it's pretty cool to be back up here and be back in my roots.
That's awesome. And I Google mapped your home yesterday, and I'm like, oh, you're closer to Victoria than you are Seattle, it looks like.
By as the arrow flies, or as the raven flies, yes. But it's a ferry ride across from Port Angeles. But we went to, I went to Victoria. To be fair, I think as a kid, I went to Victoria more than I did Seattle. And then as a young man, I went a lot, because in Canada you can drink when you're 19, as you guys, a bunch of you obviously know. Forget, I'm talking to a bunch of Canadians here. So yeah, so it was, we used to go over all the time, and it was great. Yeah. Catch the last ferry over and then catch the first ferry back. It's like 9:30 ferry and then catch the 6:30 back. It was a wild time.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for this transition. I mean, and you get 20 acres of land, and you said, well, it's the starting point, 20 acres of land, but it's going to be an interesting life you're setting up, for your family.
Yeah, I'm pumped on many levels. I mean, we bought 20 acres and trying to tie up the other 30 acres out west so we can build our own Camp Augusta. So we'll be able to host our own org events, our own Big Bears. Big Bear changed location so many times because nobody wanted to invite us back. And so I'm excited to build our space where we don't ever have to worry about that again, and we can host some really cool events on many different levels. And so, there's a lot of things that I'm working on, and I've worked pretty hard to try to get to this point where I can kind of turn my back to my team and go, okay, you guys handle the day-to-day. Let me go help improve the business at another level. And my commitment was I wasn't going to do that until I got to senior national. The classic example is you pick to do those sorts of things too soon, and then you never reach your goals. So I think I said in my promotion, this was a significant promotion for me because it was a 10-year plan. And now I'm enacting the next phase, which phase 2 of this plan, which is about another 10 years.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I surveyed the group here, Sabs, and I've got kind of 3 buckets of questions for you here, and hopefully, time permits. But one of them, again, just getting into some of the tactical stuff, it wasn't that long ago, we came out of COVID. And so you went from like 0 to 20 reps, like in a month. Like you were the ultimate straw of recruiting. Like, oh, I interviewed 5 people, had 5-second interviews, 5 new hires. And like, it was just like, wow, like a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio, like more than anybody I had ever seen. And so back then, just kind of reflecting back then, your recruiting system, your Google form, and Kat got on a call and kind of walked us through this. That was the bread and butter, was the Google form. Is this still the case, or has that been updated?
Actually, one of the things I'm really excited about is passing the baton in some of these areas. And it is the bread and butter, but the form has been updated, and Stephen has really taken over the reins at our address and is somebody that I'm super excited about really the next level of the game. He's taking a lot of the systems that were built, they're being handed to him, and he's making them better. And then Andrea as well. But Steven updated the Google form. So if you want an updated version, you get it from him. But at first I wasn't a big fan because there were some things that were missing. I expressed that to him and very quickly they were added. And now I think it's better than the one that I used, which in my opinion, over time, things should be improving, right? And I was talking to my internal team about this and our owners at our address. It's like, it's at some point you got to go from writing somebody else's momentum to building your own momentum. And if we're doing great jobs as leaders, we're passing the baton on with a better business so that they can improve on what we've built. And I certainly did that, right? Like the Jamie Hepps of the world, the John Wiggins of the world really helped me. I stood on their shoulders to build the next generation of business. And I'm hoping now there's another leader, another group, another generation who's going to do the same thing. So yeah, we still use an intake form. It absolutely is part of our bread and butter, but Steven has updated it and I think made it better than it's ever been.
Okay, that's great. Great to hear. And then along that train of thought, how do you coach your recruiters to look at the answers to give you that high probability? Like how is that? What's that?
I mean, it's pretty tactical. And to be fair, I don't do a lot of that anymore. That's Sandra, that's Steven, that's the internal team. But, this is a rare thing that anybody can say. Sandra and I started together when I was an assistant manager, and she's still my right-hand man. She's still a massive part of my business and somebody that, I couldn't have built this without her. And as a result, like especially the whole Phoenix 5 will be very much taken care of as this is something we built together. But Sandra makes this very easy on me because she handles a lot of these coaching conversations and a lot of this development now. But to answer that question, for me, it was every time somebody came in that I really liked, I'd go walk over to my recruiter, Sandra, Molly, Kat, were the ones that I spent a lot of time coaching in the early days. And I would literally point at the things that I liked on their resume, say, did you see this? What did you see? Do you remember this conversation? What was this conversation like for you? But I'm literally taking them to the things and showing them the things I like and why I like them and where the conversation went, and then asking them, how was this conversation for you? And they're like, oh yeah, I remember Billy Bob. Yeah, we talked about this and we talked about that. Yeah, I really liked him. So what I'm doing is solidifying in their mind their filters around the people we want by going back and pointing them out, right? Not just assuming they get it or taking it for granted. I'm taking the time to point out the things that we're looking for so to get more of it. And then the opposite is also true when it was a candidate that I'm like, how the hell did this guy get in? Hey, do you remember this conversation? How did this person get in? What made you think that this would be a good candidate? And I'm not blasting them. It's not a critical conversation. I'm trying to understand what they were paying attention to that made them bring the person in, and then letting them know like, hey, this is not who we're looking for, and here's why. And I break down the things that keep them from that. But I'm getting really tactical with them and getting very specific about what I'm looking for so that it's clear to them exactly what they should be grabbing.
Yeah, I mean, constant feedback, like with every interview, this is why I didn't like this guy, what'd you see? And hey, this guy's a stud, what did you see that you really liked? So you do that enough times, then it just becomes habitual, like, bing, 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 bing. They find the things like, of course, Sebastian's going to like this guy. He's like the last 20 people that were like this. I think Jenna Huss, said after she promoted like 15 owners or something like that. I remember asking her like, hey, what are you looking for in resume? She goes, I want restaurant experience. I hit home runs with people with restaurant experience. Adam likes those people. And so the two of them were in sync on exactly who it is that we're looking for. So same concept.
Yep. And what you focus on, you bring about, right? What you talk about, you bring about. So rewarding and focusing on the right things. It's the worst thing you could do to your recruiter is to not acknowledge when they're doing well, and also not acknowledge when they're not doing well, because then either way it communicates, I don't care, I'm checked out. Right. And so really this applies to everybody on your team, but specifically with your recruiter, when they're kicking ass and they're bringing in great people, let them know that you are absolutely pumped about what the result is. And then so like I was gone, we moved, I was out for 3 weeks. I came in, the first group I went and talked to was our recruiters who were all in the back as I came in, and I've been seeing the rankings. So I see how well they're doing. And I went and personally said thank you to all of them and said, hey, what's been the improvement? What's been the switch? Acknowledging that I see that they're doing a good job. Sometimes with our recruiters, we take it for granted, or we just see them as an employee and we forget to praise them and acknowledge when they're doing well. And then the result changes. So I think, when they feel like they're part of a team and their result, what they're doing every day has a material impact on the business, they'll own that differently. So yeah, I'm a big fan of both sides. Acknowledge when they're not doing well, acknowledge when they are doing well.
Yep.
Sounds a lot like training and developing a jam.
Yeah, I mean, it really
It's
is
as
the
if there's
same.
repeating patterns in our business. It's weird.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're competent at training, entry levels, I mean, you'd already know how to develop a recruiter. So I know a lot of owners like, well, I don't have that skill set and let somebody else do it. But like, dude, you know the process inside and out, obviously.
Here's the thing. As a consultant, not just as a consultant in our business, but as a business consultant, we're always trying to solve for what is the one thing that if I solve for solves for the most other things. In our business model, for me, the question was, what is the highest leverage activity for me to have the biggest impact and make the most money so that I can double down on that skill set. So I am not wasting time. And I look at things like an opportunity cost, right? If I'm putting energy into one thing, that means I'm not putting energy into 10 other things, 100 other things. So what is the one thing in our business that if we get really good, makes us the most money and increases our impact? Anybody want to guess what that is? Take a crack at it. Nobody?
High head count?
That's an offshoot of the skill set.
Well, then recruiting.
Not just recruiting and retaining, which is people development. It's being a phenomenal coach. That's it. That's your, if you get really good at that skill set, that is really what you're good at, you will make millions of dollars in our business. That's it. And so then you just got to know that. Like, well, what is it that I need to get really good at? Recruiting and retaining people, which is the ability to develop others, which is leadership. And there's 3 seasons in our business, as there are 3 seasons to really any business. You start in sales, like sales, leadership, building, sales, lead, build, sales, lead, build. You start in sales, then you learn how to lead, then you learn how to build. And you're going to become financially free and a multimillionaire by learning how to build. You can get there. You can make millions of dollars by leading. You'll make tens of millions of dollars by building. But you learn sales first, sales, lead, build. By the way, that's really any business. I can't think of any business off the top of my head that like skip that process. And it's in that order. Some people are trying to learn how to build before they ever learn how to lead and before they've ever learned how to sell. It's like, good luck with that. Right. Which is why, back to my point, there's things I'm doing now that I told myself I would not do until I got to senior national. Just fun. It was a 10-year plan, fucking crushed it, hit my 10 years, and now I get to move into a new set of things. Well, what did that do? It kept my decision matrix very clean. I kept myself from getting distracted. There are people who aren't on these calls anymore because they're not in the business or they're floundering because they're distracted. And some guys that were very promising and at different times look like they were going to be the next rock star, and they get distracted. They get distracted by trying to do too many things or do things out of order, right? That's another thing that'll kill you. That's why you want a good coach or a good mentor, is understanding sequence. Sequence and timing are incredibly important to success. A lot of times we're making the right decision. We're just making it in the wrong order. Thus, it becomes the wrong decision. There's a sequence to everything, and you want to understand the sequence.
Good stuff. Okay, shifting gears to our next bucket, Mr. Enges. Franco's making a splash. Obviously you see him. We all love, Franco. And so he's like, listen, I want to make a push. I know you're going, 10 to 50 has kind of been your brand, since you got promoted to, really the OC. I think that was, your thing. Well, he's like, hey, how do I go from 4 to 10? And so his thought process is, I know Sebastian's got the Phoenix 5 now, and it's a robust, team that's very disciplined. They do well. But what would Sebastian do if he had limited resources? So if it's just you and Sentin, obviously, there was a time when you had limited resources. It was just you and Sandra. So can you walk us through 4 owners to 10 owners, that journey?
Yep. Yeah. And our first Christmas party was, I don't know if Carmen's on the call. Our first Christmas party cost us $26.14. We went to the Ralph's off Chapman and bought 4.
It was our Halloween party.
Yeah, Halloween. But it was a holiday party. And it raged. It was a winner. It was a banger. It went off. And I say that now for the people around. Last year we spent 40 grand on our yacht party. But that isn't where we started. Right? Like you use what you have when you have it. And I also didn't build the Phoenix 5 first and then built the organization. The Phoenix 5 were built through building the organization. Right? The father of necessity, or the father of innovation, is necessity. So a lot of times people are trying to find their Phoenix 5 to go build with, and they're spending all their time there, and they're not meaningfully moving the needle in their own business. Right? And you're out of sequence. Right? So sales lead build, sales lead build. If I had 4 owners, like I got promoted, I think this is mostly correct. Jamie, you may remember this. You seem to know this stuff better than I do, but I'm pretty sure I almost got promoted entirely on first gens when I got to OC. And my overall formula has always been, I'm not relying on anyone else to get me to my goals. I'm not relying on somebody else to promote out to get me to my goals. I'm going to get me to my goals. Right. And so until recently, I had more first gens than anything else. We just switched just recently that changed. But so if I was Franco, parenting to me is like promoting owner, and all the work is done while they're still under your roof. And not all kids are going to turn out the same. Your goal is simply to do a great job of parenting them well, developing and leading them well, and then giving them the opportunity to fuck it up. And to different levels, they will. And so I would create a promoting machine that got really, really good at promoting out first gen deals. By the way, you'll make way more money and I didn't realize that because I wasn't solving for that when I was promoting out, but you'll make way more money if they're first gens. Which is lovely. I have more first gens than I think any consultant by almost double. And Jamie knows that better than I do, but I think that's probably pretty correct.
Yeah, I don't know. I do know that you're leading the charge. That I do know. So
first gens is, to me, that's the jam, right? So I say this to assistant managers and it nags them out. I said, getting promoted to assistant management once isn't the game, bro. I've been promoted to assistant management 21 times. And they're like, what? Like, you want to get so good at promoting assistant manager crews, you can do it in your sleep. But now looking back at it now, I'm like, how the fuck, no, not to neg anyone out, but like how fucking hard is it to get 10 people to want to follow you somewhere? At this point in my life, I could probably just make a single post and be like, hey, this is what I'm doing, who's in? Like, it's not that hard. We think it's hard in the beginning until you get really competent at it, and then you realize, no, this shit's not that hard. I'm making it harder than it needs to be. All right, good teams have 3 things in common: shared values, shared vision, and shared conflict resolution. And they have a purpose. And I use the framework I shared with my guys the other day, framework that I've used for a while, but I'm starting to put language to it, which is premise, PVPS. Premise is first, which is my organizing principles. It's how I make decisions. It's my first principle thinking, the premise around a particular area of my life. And then I have a vision for what I want that area of my life to look like. So in this case, we could talk about the business. So the premise of the business is creating legacy, multi-generational impact, creating passive income, or at least mostly non-active income, by developing people and coming through for my clients. Right. So that's the belief system or the organizing principle around the decisions. And from that, you guys have heard a lot of things I say, like people don't care how much you know until know how much you care. People come into your life for a reason, season for life. These are all first principle thinkings or premises that I use for making decisions in my business that help me navigate the sticky spots or the difficult spots. So the premise comes first because the principles help me make better and consistent decisions. Going back to Daniel Kahneman's book, Noise, part of the reason why is because most people don't have a set of first principle thinking. They're making decisions on the fly based on a lot of conditions, many they're not even aware of, which is why they're wildly inconsistent in their decision-making process. For anybody who knows me, you'll probably recognize that I am pretty freaking consistent in how I show up and how I think about things. So that's premise. Number 2 is vision. Clear vision about what I'm trying to create in that particular area of my life. And then the third one is purpose. What is my purpose for doing this? Turns out humans are massively motivated by purpose. So you could have a vision, you could have a premise, but if you don't have a purpose, you don't have a reason for why you're doing what you're doing, it's not nearly as motivating as you think it is. And a lot of people flounder when they feel like what they're doing doesn't have purpose. And so helping people align with purpose is really important, and creating purpose for yourself is really important. And then last is strategy. So strategy is the last part of that framework. That's premise, vision, purpose, strategy. And the reason strategy is last, the strategy gets clear once the other things are clear.
I see a lot of great note takers on here. Good stuff, Sabs. And so my final bucket, and you may have already answered this question, but there was some reflection going on where, years ago you said, hey, there's some guys in the business that are beating me that aren't as sharp as me. They just got really good at a couple things. What are those couple things?
I did already answer this.
Yeah.
But I'm another season in my life where I'm running into people who are worth $100 million that I intellectually run circles around, and it drives me up a fucking wall. So now I'm like, okay, here it is again, another level of the game, and it's the same fucking thing. People who win financially long-term, most of them have been wildly consistent and have gotten good at just a handful of things for a very long time. There are exceptions, but as a whole, they don't jump industries. They don't wildly pivot in their businesses. I'm not saying there's never a reason to do those things. I'm saying when you look at the 100 million group, most of them have been doing the same thing for 10 to 15 years plus. And then, so that's what I'm like, that's my next measure, right? $100 million. It's like, okay, well, then how do I become in the top 1% of 1% of that space? And again, it's like, well, what's that in our business? It's being able to effectively recruit and retain talent and develop them into badasses, teaching other people how to become financially free and learning how to think like an entrepreneur is your ticket to wild freedom, impact, and finances in our business. And I say that because if you that's your frame, it will change how you coach people, right? And I know this through coaching. Most people coach to their end, and they do it without even thinking about it. They're not coaching to the person's end, it's to their end. And hopefully that makes sense to everyone. So if you're trying to hit a particular number or a particular metric in your business, you may coach people to what the behavior you're looking for in the short term, and at the same time inadvertently negating the big picture in the process. For instance, I don't want to babysit an organization. I knew that from the very beginning. I never wanted to be in a position where people are only doing the right thing because I'm checking in with them, I'm talking to them, and I'm having to get on one-on-ones with them every fucking week. I didn't want to spend 10 years building a business that needed me. Not because I'm going anywhere, but if it constantly needs me, then I don't have the freedom to continue to make the business better and continue to work on creating a better future for everyone. Well, that showed up in the way I texted, how I coached people from the very beginning. I'm far more interested in teaching people how to think than what to think. I'm not a control freak. I don't need to be involved in every decision. And that's all by design. And that started from day one because I knew ultimately, going back to premise and vision, what kind of business do I want to run? And do I want my business to run me, or do I want to run it? And so for those who don't know, at Senior National, as long as you hit for 11 out of 13 qualified weeks, you lock. Once you lock, game on, right? Then you can't unqualify essentially. And you're paid at that level for as long as you're in the game. Now, obviously, the variance in pay still exists if your org collapses or something like that, but you're not having to continue to qualify, which is something that HEP negotiated, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was, I don't remember, but that was, you can thank HEP for that because he was a big driver in making that happen. But it's awesome. So that's part of the game we're in. That's part of the rules of the game. It's like, for me, that was a big deal. I got to get that locked because then I can turn my back and continue to grow the organization knowing there are great people who are going to build behind me. So, and we've got a lot of cool people that I'm very excited about who I'm certain are going to make the business better than they found it. And to me, that's the goal, is always to make the business better than you found it. Not that it's it's never complete, right? The journey is never complete. We're complete in this moment, but the journey is never complete. Plus, it's always changing. Like things I did 10 years ago, as Stephen was in that meeting, I was talking to my owners at our address in Orange County, and I was saying, like, there's things I did 10 years ago that I did 10 years ago. Just because I did them 10 years ago doesn't mean we need to do them 10 years later. I think things update. Things like we're never going to get in. I never want my organization to be in a position where we're saying, well, that's the way we've always done it. Right? There are good reasons to update shit. And so we are. And I'm excited to see guys do that. I mean, Brennan's doing that in his business. He's taken stuff that I taught him and he's taken it to another level and he's updating shit. To me, that's the goal. Not to always do it the way we've always done it, but to continue to improve the game so that we all learn and grow together. But it's Bruce Lee's, words, form to leave form. You cannot improve a system until you have first mastered the current system. And where I see people get into all kinds of fuckery is they're trying to change things before they've mastered the current system. Bruce Lee created a new form of Kung Fu, but he didn't do it until first he mastered the existing form. So when I came in, I took a very red belt mentality, even though I had a ton of sales experience and a lot of business experience. I told everyone, just treat me like I don't know anything, because I wanted to understand the system. And then I interviewed all what I call the historians of the business, these are people that predate Jamie. Jamie's not a historian. I mean, he is a historian in some ways, but I'm talking about like the Heralds of the world, the McCarthys of the world, Jim Majeski, Larry Tenenbaum, which I got a chance to talk to because of those to me are the historians of the original business that helped me understand why it was created, the culture in which it was created in, and then I could get my head around the systems, the language, and know how to adapt it without breaking the system. So a lot of times, if we don't understand all that, we try to tweak shit, we break the system because we don't understand the culture and why it was important.
That's great, Sabs.
And keep going. I'm just gonna pause.
Well, we are at time, and we're all going to get together in a couple weeks in Austin, or a suburb of Austin, Rock, Texas, I think is technically the city.
I'm pumped. I'm looking forward to it. That's gonna be great.
Yeah, it's going to be a great time. So everybody travel safe. I hope to see you and all your people there. And Sabs, thank you so much, and best of luck in Washington. And I know, you got a big house, you got a million things to do, I'm sure. Never-ending project.
It's a delight. I'm blessed.
Yes. All right, great seeing everybody. Talk to you soon.
Hey guys.